Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. Let's go back to 1968, 55 years ago this weekend. I went to my first rock festival, the San Francisco International Pop Festival. It's a concert festival that not many people know about unless you were in the Bay Area. It wasn't as famous, obviously, as Woodstock the following year in 1969. It wasn't as famous the previous year, the Monterey Pop Festival down on the grounds of the Monterey, where the Monterey Jazz Festival had been for years. That was in 1967. And I want to tell this story because I was reminded, someone else posted a post about being at this festival. I pulled out, I still have the program, and these were great bands. Now, I just turned 14 years old, but before this, this is a story video. So bear with me, and if you don't like story videos, there's other places to go, literally. So going back 2 years previously, and it all connects because my friend Danny Walker, and my friend Danny Walker passed away about 14 years ago of leukemia. And he was in the band. I was in a junior high school and into high school. And with my buddy Larry Weinberg, the drummer in the band I was in, who also passed away about a decade ago. I think I'm the last man standing in that band, unfortunately. But in 1966, I've told the story many times, but it leads up to this. Monday, August 29th, 1966, Danny knocks on my door at 4 o'clock or so in the late afternoon. And he said, my father has 2 tickets for us to see the Beatles tonight at Candlestick Park, if your mother can drive me. My mother happened to be standing nearby. She came over and she said, you know, Norman, you have a drum lesson tonight. And if since we didn't cancel it 24 hours in advance, we have to pay. You can go next year. You can go next year. Well, I didn't go see the Beatles. Danny didn't go see the Beatles. These 2 tickets never were used. The Candlestick Park did not sell out. My mother's no longer alive. I no longer play the drums, and I never saw the Beatles. Danny Walker's father was a criminal attorney by the name of George Walker. And this all connects. This is why I'm telling this story here. But Danny was one of my best friends at that age. So I just turned 14. In fact, in 1968, this weekend was just prior to Danny's birthday, his 14th birthday, which was on Halloween. So Danny's father took both of us, both days, to the Alameda Fairgrounds in the East Bay, across from San Francisco Bay. And we went to this festival. And I'm going to go through some of the bands. Now, I don't remember all the sets specifically. There's certain bands I remember. But I'm going to, cut away while I'm telling these stories a little bit to some of the this program, some images in the program, and the band list. And I just want to go over these. So I'm going to talk about these bands based on the records I have. First, there was Mad River. They're a band from Ohio. They came to San Francisco, actually the East Bay, into Berkeley in 1967. And they're sort of psychedelic blues. It's not a great album. I think the cover is more interesting than the album. They got signed to Capitol Records, and they were popular for a while, but never really quite gelled beyond this period. But I love this record. This is my original copy of Mad River on Capitol Records. I really don't remember how they sounded at all, but it was cool seeing them, obviously. Now, this one I hadn't heard of at the time either. This is the Fraternity of Man in 1968. A lot of you, or a lot of people my age, will remember them from the soundtrack to Easy Rider. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. I picked up this record that year in 1969 after that movie came out, and this is a fantastic movie. It's sort of a preamble, partially, of bands like Little Feat, overlaps into the Mothers of Invention. And they were a cool band. It has a sense of humor. They actually cover on here a Frank Zappa song called Oh No, I Don't Believe It. Those of you who know Zappa and Mothers of Invention know that song. But a little kind of a phallic-y, symbolic cover. But I just love this record. In fact, the whole record is good on here. There's Last Call for Alcohol, Field Day. It's a great hippie kind of psychedelic-y, a little bit of a country influence going on there, folksy, but more electronic. But Fraternity of Man, I do remember them slightly, but not really in terms of the set list at all. Then Lee Michaels. I had just gotten this album, I think. I think this is the album I got. Maybe I'm misremembering that possibly, because I also saw him in 1970 open up for Blood, Sweat, and Tears at the Oakland Coliseum when BST were huge. Duo, him and his drummer Frosty, the great big organ player and soulful rock and roll and just thunderous music for a duo, and Frosty on drum, just powered. I just remember them being really powerful. Again, I don't remember specific songs, but they had one hit, one kind of AM hit, Do You Know What I Mean, on his 5th album. So Lee Michaels played that too. Now, Johnny Rivers, I remember only because the song just years prior to that everybody my age was into was Secret Agent Man, the song that was written for the American version of Agent Man with Patrick McGowan, the TV show Secret Agent Man. And of course, there's a man who lives a life of danger. Everyone he meets, he stays a stranger. By kissing persuasive lips. I know I jumped, but I love that line. Kissing persuasive lips. I think when I heard the record at the time in the day, I didn't hear persuasive. Kissing something lips. I didn't know until years later. But this is just the greatest hits comp I got years later, literally. But I remember them playing that song. Now this I remember because I remember they always did this long version of Boogie. I don't remember all the songs they did. Of course, they became huge in Woodstock, going up the country the subsequent year. Was that 69? It became a big hit. I don't remember the exact date of that, but this is the one to have, Boogie with Candide. They also did Live in the Blues, which I have, that double live album that contains a 40-minute version of Candide, or refried Boogie. Bob the Bear Height. For a little while at Woodstock, Harvey Mandel was in the band too, but I love this record. The blues rock thing was really big. Now, one of the bands that I was so excited to see, because the year prior to 1968, they had a huge, massive hit. And I still, to this day, I know some people see them as a novelty in a way, this song, Inagata de Vida. Of course, the working title was In the Garden of Eden, and they were yelling, what's the name of the song? In the Garden of Eden! And somebody misheard it as Inagata de Vida, which is way cooler and way better. Of course, one entire side is the song at 17 minutes and 5 seconds. Drum solo, bass solo, everything. What a great, great riff and a great song. But I really loved seeing this, and I remember them doing Inagata de Vida. And that was one of the highlights for me as a 14-year-old of that day at this pop festival. Now, this also, okay, the first Deep Purple album, I bought this several months before because of the song Hush. I didn't know who Joe South was. I didn't know it was a song written by Joe South. I'm not even sure if I knew or ever heard of Joe South at this point in 1968. But this song was huge, and I love this song. I kind of stuck with Deep Purple. I know they became a heavier band. Obviously, Ian Gillan joins and replaces the singer of this at the time. Let's see, Rod Evans obviously left. I like Ian Gillan, and I like in rock, and I like those first few, and then I kind of lost interest. And I'm not really a heavy rock guy, but I sure loved them, and they were incredible. And of course, the song Hush. And what I really liked on this album when it came out is that slow cover version of Help. If you're going to do a cover of a Beatles record, you better make sure that you make it yours. And they make it theirs on this album, Tetragrammaton Records, Deep Purple. Now, I had been a huge fan of the Animals. And of course, all the Animals peeled off. The organ player, Alan Price, quits. He goes solo. He has some mild hits, mostly in the UK and even here a little bit. After that, great piano player, great organ player. I've done a video where I've showcased Oh Lucky Man. That's way later in the 70s, 80s, or I guess, maybe is that the 70s? Yeah, 70s. That, for Oh Lucky Man, that great soundtrack. But Chaz Chandler, the bass player, discovers Jimi Hendrix. So they changed the name, Eric Burdon and the Animals. I don't even know who the other Animals are. at this point. But what a great slew of singles. On this, they do San Francisco Nights. Of course, the next one, you have Sky Pilot and Monterey after the Monterey Festival. But San Francisco Nights, the only problem with that song, he says, on a warm San Francisco night, not many, Eric. When did you hang out in San Francisco? But he got all into the West Coast psychedelic scene, the flower power, West Coast, Monterey, obviously, and the year before, and of course this. But 1968, Winds of Change. This is a cool record. They do some weird psychedelic stuff. The Black Plague, cover of Painted Black by the Rolling Stones. The back-to-back albums with this and the other one with Monterey are just fantastic albums of the day, of the time. Now, I remember these guys being great, and this is the Chambers Brothers. Of course, in 1968, that summer when I got out of, or actually, June of 68, I got out of junior high school, and I can't remember who, it wasn't my parents, somebody gave me this of a graduation out of junior high school, this album. I wore that one out tremendously. I've recently, in the last few years, found a copy with a hype sticker. But they're a soul rock and roll band. And, of course, later I would get into songs like Curtis Mayfield's songs, People Get Ready, which is great. This is a great soul record, but it's more of a rock and roll record. But Time Has Come Today is one of the great masterpieces of the time, in the day. That psychedelic, this is produced by David Rubinson on Columbia Records. The tick-tock, that like cowbell percussion thing, and the long version, Time Has Come Today, with all the psychedelic and stuff going on. I just love this. Everyone I knew, all my friends, were really into this record. Of course, the great Chambers Brothers there. And I remember this song. I don't remember a lot of the rest of the set. Again, I'm 14 years old. The smell of patchouli, when you walked up in the stands, it was like an outdoor racetrack in a way, at the fairgrounds, and just one side we were all sitting in, and there was a stage in the middle of the racetrack there. But obviously they had stands or booths or something, selling batik Indian bedspreads and candles and all the West Coast hippie chazarai. But I totally remember the smell of patchouli more than anything else. Obviously pot. I don't know if I knew what pot smelled like, but the patchouli was stronger than the scent of marijuana back then. 1968. Now, this was one of my favorite bands. When this album came out in 1968, I just remember playing this record every day for about a month. And for many, many years, this was my favorite Procol Harum record. Their second record, Shine On Brightly. They played, and I was in awe of them. I love them. This is one of the highlights of the day that I do remember. These songs, they did that long version of In Held 'Twas I. I always get that wrong. In Held 'Twas in I. Was it 17 minutes or something? It's very prog-like, psychedelic-y art rock. And this band, Gary Brooker, one of the great blue-eyed soul singers, his piano playing, Matthew Fisher on organ, the great guitar playing of Robin Trower. Just what a great band. This is a great album. Then, of course, there was Jose Feliciano. He was really big on the top of the charts with his cover version of Light My Fire. And it just was a nice palate cleanser. I didn't know what a palate cleanser was when I was 14, but this is a palate cleanser for that show. I think he also did a California Dreamin'. I don't remember everything else, but it was really nice. But I was really at that point really into the rock and roll more and the electric stuff. But Jose Feliciano, it was kind of great to see him around that time. Another great act, and I don't remember the songs at all, and that's the Buddy Miles Express. This is a later album. This is Them Changes. I always forget what year this came out. This was after the show, as I recall. But he was great. I just remember them being really loud and really great. And of course, he would join Jimi Hendrix with a band of gypsies. What a great drummer. This is an album with Them Changes, a huge hit later. Forgot the dates on this. But again, soulful, bluesy rock and roll. And last but not least, Creedence Clearwater Revival. This album came out that summer, just maybe 3 months prior to this show, and I was all over that. The radio stations in San Francisco were playing Susie Q. I didn't know who Dale Hawkins was who wrote that. I didn't know it was a cover song. Also, I Put a Spell on You. I'd heard that before the original, but they did a great version of this. And of course, this band exploded after this record, obviously. They're from the East Bay, El Cerrito. But seeing Creedence Clearwater Revival in 1968, right at their debut, they just hit it. I remember they would do these long solos, and John Fogerty's vocals were really wonderful. So that was the San Francisco International Pop Festival, a festival that's not really talked about, not really promoted. I don't think there's any footage of it. I've never seen any footage. There were several other acts that I don't have music to that I don't remember specifically. Of course, I know of them. I remember seeing their albums. Rejoice, which is a duo. There was a band called Womb. There was MC Squared. I don't remember them at all. I don't remember even hearing them, but I'm sure they were there. Maybe I was walking around smelling the patchouli or something. The Loading Zone I remember, but not really well. And of course, Grassroots played too. I don't specifically remember them, but of course the Grassroots had a lot of AM hits back then. And for whatever reason, I can't find my Grassroots record. I must have misfiled it. Now I'm going to circle back to Danny Walker and his father, George Walker. A year later, 1969, I had some impressionable friends who were a little older than me in high school who had their driver's license. I was 15 years old, and they dragged me, or invited me to go with them to a show at Altamont Pass. The Rolling Stones were supposed to put a free show on at Golden Gate Park, and they couldn't get the permits right. San Francisco wouldn't get their permits. It was going to be initiated by Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead because they did so many live shows in Golden Gate Park around this time. It ended up in Altamont Pass. The concert, I just remember it being loud. I don't remember the music being particularly engaging because I was so far back. But of course, the Rolling Stones headlined. It was the Jefferson Airplane, one of my favorite San Francisco band at the time. Marty Balin got beaten up at the show. And I didn't know this until the following day. Grateful Dead refused to play. There was Santana play, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it was fun because I'd never been in a crowd so large. It was 300,000 people, and this was the end of the year of the Woodstock, so it was really the antithesis, the opposite of all that. It was a downer to a lot of people. I wasn't into drugs then. I wasn't taking any drugs or anything, but it was an interesting day and night, and I don't remember how we even got home or when we got home on that experience. It's a memory of being there, but I don't remember specifically the music. Obviously, until I later saw the film "Give Me Shelter," the Maisley Brothers films. But my friend Danny Walker's father, as I said, was a criminal attorney, and he defended Alan Pizarro. Alan Pizarro was the Hells Angel who killed Meredith Hunter. He stabbed him to death after Meredith pulled a gun. Now, it's been controversial over the years. I don't want to get into that, but Alan Pizarro got off on self-defense and using the Maisley Brothers film. So this all comes together with Danny's father. The last time I ever saw Danny's father was at a tribute at the Great American Music Hall for the photographer Jim Marshall, because he also handled photographer Jim Marshall's gun and drug charges. And that's another story. Watch the Jim Marshall documentary. It's fantastic. It's a photographer you can probably find on Apple TV or somewhere. I highly recommend that. In fact, I'm going to put a link at the end. There'll be a box. I did a profile on the photography of Jim Marshall, someone who I knew for almost 30 years, I guess. Small world connections, all these coincide. But anyway, so that is 1968, the San Francisco International Pop Festival, a long forgotten festival that I went to when I was 14 years old. And I was an impressionable young music fan, and that really kind of opened the world up musically a lot more for me, and going to so many concerts over the years since, subsequent to that. So thanks for watching. This is sort of a mini episode of Memories of a Vinyl Junkie. I really appreciate everything. And I want to thank you all. I just hit 30,000 subscribers. So thank you so much. Subscribe if you haven't, if you want to. It's free. It doesn't cost anything except for my wit, my personality, and my stories. Take care. Mazzy loves you.